I'm John,
I'm Caden.
And I'm Josh.
and this is
The
The
Dark,
Dark
Alley,
Alley
Podcast.
Welcome back to the third or fourth or fifth something episode of the Dark Alley Podcast. We've recorded a few of them that have never been released. But today we have reunited. We have coordinated on our Google Maps. We've met in a location here in an alley to talk about our top 5 albums of the 2010 decade. I'll just say my number one, do a mic drop, and leave.
Yeah, let's do that. Caden, how about Caden? Let's see your number 5 from because you had your recent session listening through some of the ones. What did you arrive on for number 5?
I arrived on, and this is subject to change, but for now, my number 5 is Arcade Fire's The Suburbs.
Ooh, is that the one that won the Grammy?
It did win a Grammy, yeah, in 2010.
Nice.
It was released in 2010, won the Grammy.
What kind of album is that? I've never listened to that.
They'd be considered indie rock, and that album was basically them going full force. I think it's a bit over an hour of like this long, lots of tracks of just like a classic rock album, and I think they pulled it off really well. They kind of have like an 80s aesthetic to it as well. But I really vibe with it. I've liked Arcade Fire for a while now, but I think that was definitely their strongest album from this last decade.
That's pretty cool. Sounds like the kind of album I'd like. I've been replaying like the Tony Hawk games, and they are filled with indie rock. So I think I'd vibe with it.
That's cool. Yeah.
Have you heard that, John? That album?
No, I have not. I don't think I've ever heard Arcade Fire. I've heard of them.
Really?
Same.
But Childish Gambino has a lyric that says, I set the game ablaze. I'm an arcade fire."
Ooh.
Nice.
That's basically the most I've been exposed to them.
I once rapped in an arcade, so that was Arcade Fire. But
Did you really?
Yeah.
No, but
Oh, because I've been at concerts that take place in arcades.
Wait, have you actually?
Yeah. I've been concerts that have taken place in arcades, pizza parlors, random storage units. You gotta do what you gotta do when you're super indie and have no money.
Yeah, no, totally.
Any other thoughts on that, John? And I guess can't really say much.
I can't really say much because I've never heard it, but a cool thing about this podcast is like this particular one is, Caden will throw out something like Arcade Fire where we've never heard it, and if it's in his top 5, like we obviously value his opinion and his taste, so like now it makes me want to go check them out.
Yeah.
I was going to say the same thing about this podcast, that this will be a special episode, just for the fact that we're basically recommending music to each other and we're going to discover new music.
Yeah, because all the others so far we're kind of discussing things we're already super thorough on, whereas this will be quite a varied in that sense. I think it'll be interesting.
It's almost like a bring your kid to work day.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
Kinda. Bring your 5 kids to work.
My number 5 album is Swimming by Mac Miller.
Ooh. I'm going to write these down, by the way, your guys'.
Cool. Have you ever heard, has anyone heard that one?
I also have not, but I've heard of it, and from what you've told me about it, it really sounds like something I'd like because you say it's quite like emotionally driven, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as you'll, like I'm super into Kid Cudi and stuff, so it sounds like another one I'd really be into.
Oh, absolutely. He's so his earlier albums were more like just kind of rapping for the sake of rapping, like rapping about drugs and whatnot, and having more fun with his music. But as he got older, he was way more introspective on that Kid Cudi type vibe. So he was rapping more about his feelings, and it has that vibe to it that I think you'd really like.
Oh yeah, I love that when artists do like those kind of late stage, mature, introspective albums. Obviously, Jay-Z's probably a great example, but yeah, that really sounds. It sounds like my kind of thing. Like I said.
Definitely. And I honestly probably would have put it further up my list, but I recently got into it as of, I don't know, at the beginning of this year. So I might have more of a recency bias towards it. So that's why
Yeah.
it hit number 5, where it might one day hit my number 3 as high as number 3. But right now it's sitting at number 5.
Yeah, I feel those kind of albums always get better with time, usually, if they're done well. Like, I remember when I first listened to The Weeknd, like, I enjoyed it at first, but then the more you listen to it and the more you got immersed in that gloomy world, the more it really just clicked and hit harder.
Yeah.
So it might be the same with that, if it ages well.
It ages like a nice cheese.
Have any thoughts on it, Caden?
Not much other than I really want to get into listening to some of Mac's albums. I personally, I've heard like songs from him here and there, but I never delved into his discography. Actually, my best friend from high school got really into him, and I think I kind of was always curious, but I just never knew where to start. But perhaps I'll start with swimming.
Highly recommended. Highly recommended. All right, Josh, number 5.
Yeah, so this is probably a an orthodox pick, maybe, but I really like Lana Del Rey's "Lust for Life."
Nice, really.
Yeah, a lot of people prefer ultra violence and stuff, and it's definitely close. But I went with Lust for Life because I'm a huge fan of those kind of albums with really spacey, grand vibes, and this album really has really that it has this really spacey, really chilled vibe all the way throughout. So it's just an amazing album to vibe to, and it's probably also a most varied album thematically, as it has some political stuff on there. It has a little bit of hip hop with even Playboy Carti on there at one point. But actually, and like she got Playboy Carti and Stevie Nicks on the same album, like that, and it made it work. Is wow. Impressive, really. But yeah, I really like it.
That's interesting, that pick, because I see, I think I've only listened to Ultraviolence by her, and also a lot of her singles, but that one I see the consensus is that Norman fucking Rockwell is her best album.
That's the one of it. Like I've been meaning to listen to that since it came out. It's been on my phone since it came out. I just haven't got around to it for some reason. So that might take it. I imagine if I listen to that, maybe that will be my favorite.
Yeah, that would be pretty exciting if it takes it.
Yeah.
I've personally never listened to a Lana Del Rey album.
Yeah, I can get that. It's I dare say music is like, I don't know, like a lot. I guess that's why I think I like Lust for Life the most, is because most of her albums, I dare say, are kind of inaccessible in the sense that like they're always about kind of the same thing in a way, always very relationship driven and stuff, which can be kind of inaccessible to some people, I imagine. And I usually am not super into that kind of thing, but like I said, I just hear this singing and the way she executes it, it really works for me in a way that it doesn't with many others for me.
Yeah.
Many other artists.
I don't think I've never listened. I've never not listened to an album of hers on purpose. I've just never thought of diving into her discography before, but I know that she's very highly thought of.
Yeah, because I remember I always see her thrown around in like she has a following in the hip hop community, even though she's never done hip hop. So I think I just checked at the time. I was just looking for new music, and Lust for Life was like fresh out, and I heard good things. So I just listened to it on a whim, and that's what got me into her.
Nice.
Yeah.
Born to Die was actually the only Lana album I've listened to. Misspoke.
Oh yeah, that's also quite a Yeah, that's a highly regarded album. Like that and Ultraviolence are like the most popular ones from what I've seen, and I guess Norman Roswell is a Norman thing as well.
Yeah.
What's Caden's number 4?
Number 4. Let me see. My number 4 is David Bowie's Black Star.
Nice.
Yeah.
Have either of you listened to it?
Negative, sir.
No, I haven't. He doesn't his music have quite like a spacey vibe? Like I was just saying that about Lana Del Rey. I feel it's quite surprising I haven't actually got into his music because from what I've heard, it seems to be the kind of thing as well. Like I'd like.
Yeah, I would say. Yeah, he does a good job of like maintaining variety while also sticking to his usual sound. But yeah, I would say so. And even like a lot of the motifs in his music, recurring character. Yeah, no, I highly recommend it. Obviously.
What draws you to the album?
Honestly, I would. Well, first I would say it's definitely on or sort of more on the inaccessible side. Like the first time I heard it, I respected it, I think, but I wasn't like blown away by it. Or I wasn't like totally floored by it. Then I think I just I think I started reading about like the details surrounding his death, because the album came out 2 days before he died, and he actually like didn't tell anyone that he had liver cancer, and he knew he was going to die, so he literally put all of his thoughts and like trying to reckon with the fact that he's dying. He put all of that into the lyricism and music for this album, and then released it right before he died, and like dropped a bomb on the world.
Oh, that sounds crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's insane. But then I think it just like individual tracks started like kind of were, I don't want to say earwormy, but I would like think about them later, and then I kept like revisiting a lot of tracks, and then even though there's only 7 on the album, but then I like listened to it again, and I was like, yeah, this is a pretty fucking incredible album. I think it's just like the production is really unique, and I don't know how to describe it. I feel like it's one of those things you just would have to listen to.
Yeah, and what you said as well about it not clicking for you first, but then just really taking off later. My number 1 pick was the exact same for me, so I feel that's a sign that is good music, and as we were talking about earlier, a sign that it will be ageless.
Yeah, I would say half of, maybe rounding, I don't know, roughly half of my list for top 5, I didn't really vibe with at first. It took me a while to get into.
Yeah,
that's funny. My number 1 pick is the same exact thing.
Damn.
Nice.
I wonder what makes a song an earworm song.
I don't know. I feel like it has to have like a lot of multiple components that make up for that.
Earworm in what, in the sense that it just kind of gets stuck in your head, or
yeah.
We're not just stuck in your head, but lingers and makes you think about it later.
Right.
I think for film, I know that would generally be like if there's a lot of attention to detail and like very intricate, meaning like every frame was like spent hours.
I was gonna say depth, because
depth.
Songs that really stick with me are the ones where I listen to and then I'll notice like a new bit of instrumentation in the background I never spotted before, or like a line that has a different meaning than I originally caught, things like that.
Yeah, I think the best albums or best movies, best anything have a lot of depth because the artist put so much care and time and attention to the little subtle things that then stand out to you and reward numerous rewatches or replays.
Yeah, like that's part of what we like with the Back to the Future trilogy. I wormed it in there, got it in there. Like I've seen each of those 100 times, and I still catch new stuff all the time, which just really adds even more to it for me. You know, this really adds to why they're my favorite films.
This is my number 4 because I have very good memories with it. I have the signed album cover hanging on my wall. Love Story by Yellow Wolf.
Yes.
Hey, he said
it.
Hey.
I couldn't leave it off. I wanted to leave it off because I wanted to try to challenge myself from some variety. But at the same time, I couldn't deny Love Story's placement on my top 5 list because it has so much replayability and every song is a different journey.
Yeah, really well put. Yeah. And I love as well, not only that, but then it all comes together to create this amazing picture of him as an individual.
Mm-hmm.
Is with Trial by Fire, that it's interesting about that as an album is it kind of goes down into the story of like an entire town. So then Love Story is a nice complement to that because it's more the story of a single man in raised in that town. That's why I really like them as a two thing. But yeah, I agree, is amazing. Like, it's musically is a big part of that. Like, you have some songs which are like fully singing, and then there's some storytelling tracks like Johnny Cash and Disappear, and it's just such, yeah, like you said, it's just a ride, both in individual songs and then as a cohesive thing as well. It's a really super underrated album.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I remember I went to a concert when he was doing his Love Story tour, and it was just electric.
Yeah, I saw him during the Love Story tour as well. He came to London, I think, somewhere in England. I went to.
Wow,
His concerts are amazing.
They are. He he really made me think. I knew it wasn't possible or it wasn't going to happen, but he really made me think that Eminem was going to come out during Best Friend.
Oh yeah.
Just because of the way he was hyping up that end, but then he decided to sing the chorus a couple more times, and I was like, all right, it's not going to happen, but this is still amazing.
Yeah.
I think, you know, I love the song Change so much.
Oh yeah.
Like, it could go from a song like Change to a song like Best Friend to a song like Disappear, and they're all on the same album, and like Devil in My Veins. It's just like there's so many different genres on this one album. It doesn't leave anybody out. And like something that Eminem tries to do is like appeal to everybody, and there's obvious misses. Yellow tried that on this album and nailed it every single time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a big part of that is the structuring. Like, for example, Outer Space does not fit in with the rest of the album at all. Yeah, it works because he put it as the opening track. Like, even just small things like that actually really work really well. And I love it as well because it works really well. It's like a transition, like transition in a way, because you have Outer Space, which is like the rock rap thing, and then this Change, which has all those different styles. And what Change works for me as well because it's like what we were saying about how it grows on you. Because at first it kind of sounds like a mess to me, Change, because there's like three different styles all meshed together. Mm-hmm. Then you listen to it more and it all just clicks and it's incredible. And then that transitions into the full country with American You. It's just really good track listing.
Yeah, and the variety never ends. It's like you never know what you're going to get in the next song.
Yeah.
And it ends on this intense, like, fiddle song.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Which is just nuts.
What do you think of it, Caden?
As I honestly recollect the individual songs more than full album, but I definitely enjoy the songs that I heard from it. I remember, I found myself pleasantly surprised by the instrumentation. I was like, yeah, this is a pretty good album. I do like it. I ought to revisit the album as a full experience because, like I said, I'm more familiar with individual songs from it. But yeah, I feel favorable towards it.
Yeah.
Well, very nice, very nice.
I'm trying to get. Also, I guess just in general as well, I love that dynamic of like how he mixes in rapping and singing, kind of bouncing between the two. I just love the whole dynamic, in general, and this album does it really well too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really great album.
Cool. All right, you're number 4.
Yeah. What's my number 4? I'm drawing a blank. Right, Kid Cudi, Man on the Moon 2.
Hey.
Yeah. Yeah. I realized when I was thinking of the list, I realized that just got into 2010. So yeah. But Man on the Moon 2 is just it's really one of the it's incredible as an album in terms of an experience. Like it sends you on this, like, just the way it just sends you on this psychedelic, emotional, trippy adventure. it's just really cool musically. Like you can really just get lost in it, and it's the way he really brings that out musically with the way the deep singing and the belting out in songs like Mr. Rager. It's just musically, it's just an incredible adventure, as I said. And the lyrics as well, also some really surprisingly deep stuff. Like I don't think Kid Cudi ever really has crazy deep lyrics necessarily, but they were really some really deep stuff here on Man on the Moon 2. I felt Mr. Rager has some really lyrics that really trip you out the more you think of it. Like I'm drawing a blank right now, but it's overall it's a yeah, like I said, it's just an adventure. Really sums it up for me. Just a really trippy experience. Obviously, just great musically. Yeah, I really like it.
Nice. I've listened to it a bunch actually. More so the beginning of the album. I'm gonna search for it right now. Man on.
It's interesting because I actually prefer, like for me, I prefer the like, because the first half, like the first third, probably like the lightest part of the album. I've always been drawn more to the last 2/3 of it, where it really plummets into this dark, spiritual, trippy thing. It's really the appeal of it for me. I can understand the first half, being better for you.
Yeah, I really like the intro with
Oh
CeeLo
yeah,
Green.
it's got Miss Cuddy versus the World with CeeLo.
Yeah, yeah, it's a very very solid album. It's like you said, it can get very trippy.
Do you listen to it, Caden?
Honestly, I haven't. I've listened. I'm not too familiar with Cudi. I've heard individual songs from him, but I have not delved into any of his albums yet.
I think you'll like it because it's very psychedelic, and I know you like some artists with very psychedelic vibes to them.
Yeah. Do you
Tame Impala?
Yeah, Tame Impala. Do you find Man on the Moon 2 is like a good introduction to him, or no?
I'd say Man on the Moon 1 would be a better intro.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for me, like Man on the Moon 1 is better as an intro, and Man on the Moon 2 is the kind of thing that grows on you with time. I can never decide which I like more, but basically Man on the Moon 1 is much more accessible, I'd say.
Yeah.
It took 2 a while to click for me, whereas 1 I loved immediately.
Right.
They're both, but I love them both pretty much equally now.
He's gonna make a third one, right? One day.
Yeah, so I mean, at one point he bigged it up for years, and he decided not to do it. But then, obviously, in the recent collab with Eminem, he said the trilogy continues, and I can only refer to Man on the Moon. So, guess he's doing it.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
I never thought that was referring to that. Well, because I'm not familiar with his discography, but I think most people took it as like, oh, he's gonna have a collab with Eminem,
like again. A trilogy of collabs,
but not necessarily. Yeah, trilogy.
There was a Man on the Moon 2.5. You know, his album Satellite Flight. Have you heard that, John?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's considered 2.5. So there's that, I guess. But yeah.
So he's doing like a Kingdom Hearts type deal.
Final Fantasy.
He's gonna do Kingdom Hearts 2.55 encoded next.
5.5.
Deep Kid Cudi lore on board for it.
And then the third will finally come out, and everyone will be kind of disappointed.
Yeah. In Passion, Pain, and Demon Slaying, that was basically Man on the Moon 3. It was very much in that line. But many people just consider that Man on the Moon 3. I imagine he kind of did design it as that, but then didn't release it under that name, just to avoid like lower expectations. You know, like why Dre released it as Compton rather than Detox.
Right, yeah. Because you can't really live up to a name after you've hyped it for so long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's impossible. It's impossible to do, yeah.
Yeah, practically is. Huh.
But, you know, your boy's still doing Exhale after he's talked about it for 4 years, so.
Yeah.
All right, I guess we are at number 3.
Number 3. Oh man, this list is crazy, but for my number 3 right now, I put Kendrick Lamar's "To Pimp a Butterfly."
Nice.
Ooh.
Edgy take for Josh.
I was hoping. Yeah, well, you get your thoughts out the way first, because after I say my thoughts, I'm getting cancelled from the internet. So
yeah. We're in a dark alley for a reason, and we're hoping one of us will get jumped. Hopefully, this time it'll be Josh.
Yeah. Anyway, what makes it work for you?
I think what makes it work for me is this was yet another album that was inaccessible to me, and it took me, I think, a few listens for it to click with me, and I think part of what makes it really work for me is, to me, I see the narrative and themes as strong as Good Kid, Mad City. I mean, if you want to say they're equivalent, sure. But I think what pushes it over it for me, honestly, is I think musically it is more interesting and unique and captivating to me. Like, talk about like replay value. It's like every time I listen to it, or even just individual tracks, I feel like I'm always discovering things. And I think it's because the immense amount of detail that went into it, along with like all the features that he had on it and what they brought to the table. It just is like, it feels like very overwhelming, but it also at the same time is, I guess, palatable once you I guess let it just wash over you. Because the first couple listens I was not really feeling it, or I could admire it, but I wasn't really vibing with it yet.
Yeah, I'm still at that stage, because with me, like, I appreciate the themes, and I recognize how deep the music is and everything, but it's just not hitting me. Like, I feel like, the kind of themes this album has and everything, like, I feel like it should be really powerful, and like Damn and stuff, hit me in that way, and Good Kid, Mad City and stuff as well. But I don't know, it's just, I don't know what it is. It's like, honestly, just musically, it just bores me, honestly. I'm not into jazz at all, but even I'm not into country either. But Love Story really hooked me. But I don't know what it is. But it's just something about it just has not clicked for me yet. Like I said, I think the themes are really well portrayed. I was, like I said, musically, there's an insane amount of depth there, so I can recognize it's objectively a great album. But yeah, I'm still at that stage where it's just not clicked for me yet, unfortunately. And also, as I said in the chat, For Free, I just find really grating. Like, it's the way he says it and the way it repeats and repeats it. I find that really grating to listen to, and I know that's the nail in the coffin on my public perception. Yeah, I know a lot of people put that as like one of their favorites. So I know that's the nail in the coffin for me. But I find that grating as hell. But in general, I like a lot of songs in there. I find the singles really good. So I think it is really a case where it's just that accessibility, where it's going to take a while for you to sink in, because I love the singles, but the rest hasn't clicked for me yet. But I think, as you said, it probably clicked for you, so it might for me eventually with more listens.
Yeah. What about you, John? Thoughts on it?
My thoughts on it are, I think it is a very, very, very well done album. It has. I think I'm in the middle of the road between you and Josh. I think I do recognize how great it is, but it hasn't clicked for me as far as I'm going to go out of my way to play it. I appreciate the hell out of it, and all of its messages that it brings forth. I appreciate the depth and really like the voice acting Kendrick does all throughout the whole album. He really raises the bar as far as rap, sure, but rap, if you are a good actor, if you're a good voice actor, he has so many different voices that he introduces on this album that he really paints a full picture, and I really love that about this album.
Very cinematic.
Yeah.
The strength of all his projects for me, and it's definitely well here too.
Yeah, I would argue Good Kid, Mad City is cinematic as well. And actually, if we were allowing repetition of artists, Good Kid, Mad City would probably have to be number 4 for me, right behind To Pimp a Butterfly. But like I said, just musically, I think it just being so original, inventive, and just more unique and interesting to me in that respect, that pushed it over the top for me.
No, that's awesome.
Good Kid, Mad City was going to be my number 5, but I just slightly prefer Lust for Life, which is probably blasphemy, but yeah.
Hey, it's all opinions.
We're being arrested. What the hell's that?
Yeah, I'm getting arrested for loitering in dark alleys.
I was just about to say that.
So while you're getting processed and charged, we should be at our number 2 by then. So,
no, but John's number 3.
Yeah, my number 3. Well, I wanted to just bring it back to Kendrick one more time. Earlier this year, I went through a Kendrick phase where I was listening to a whole lot of Kendrick, and I had such a good time doing it. I just wanted to go on YouTube and watch every interview I could find from him, and just his humbleness and you could tell how driven he is when he's in the zone to make music, and there's just nothing I don't admire about him.
Like with the Black Panther soundtrack, like he could have just, did his 2-3 songs and then, just regulated the rest of it. But he was on almost every track there. It says a lot to me. He didn't even put his name on them either.
Yeah. All right. Number 3.
Yeah.
Some Nights by Fun, the band.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah. Back in 2011 or 12, they were absolutely everywhere, and they probably outstayed their welcome.
Yeah. Because, I remember, what was it? Was it We Are Young? Is that it? We Are. Yeah. Like that was everywhere. I loved that song, and also I loved his Nate Rios, whatever the fuck, his performance on Headlights. So there's just always been a band I've wanted to check out because I loved everything I've heard from them. I just haven't got there. But why does it work so much for you?
I like it. What they do is they their band consists of, I don't know who the third guy is, but Nate, I say Rouse, I'm probably wrong, but Nate Rouse, he's so good, and Jack Antonoff, he's a band member, and he writes with Taylor Swift. He's written a bunch of her biggest hits. He's written for Katy Perry. He's written for Lorde. You think of a big pop star, he's probably written a few hit singles for them. So like they had Nate's voice and Jack's writing. It's going to create good music.
Yeah.
So yeah, that album came out, and I liked We Are Young, and I liked Some Nights, and it took me a minute to get into the auto-tune on the Some Nights song, but like I went and I randomly, this was before streaming music was a big deal, like before Apple Music, so I went to Target and I bought the Some Nights album, and I put it in the car, and it didn't leave my car for the entire year. It has this song on there called Stars, which I'll send you guys a link to it later, but this song Stars, like he sings basically like candidly about how he misses being more private, and he misses just being alone talking to his mom in the mornings, which I found like singers don't usually get that in depth, and I just felt like I felt that. And so that happened for like the first minute or two of the song, and then the rest of the 6 or 7 minute song, it's him singing over the changed beat in auto-tune the entire time, and it just worked. And
sounds super,
actually crazy. Like I loved that song so much, it's called Stars. I made a song called Stars on one of my albums, Rugrat X, just because I wanted to make a song called Stars because I loved that one so much.
Oh, that's cool. That sounds really cool. You sold me on it. That sounds so cool.
Yeah, I'll link it to you maybe after the podcast. But yeah, number 3, Some Nights. I'll always hold that album close, no matter how like national acclaim it got or whatever.
Yeah, you sold me on it. That sounds really cool.
Awesome.
So I guess my number 3 is My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy.
Oh,
nice.
interesting timing because Caden, you have it's kind of gone down in your estimations, right?
Yeah, it has, to be honest.
Why? How come it doesn't work as much for you now?
Oh, I was gonna ask you what makes it work.
Does it work for me? Yeah.
I know we had the Kanye podcast 3 months ago, which is crazy. The last podcast that we did.
The unreleased ones. Ooh.
Yeah.
We got a treasure trove.
Treasure trove. I still feel like I have to articulate it, but to put it simply, I think I said in the chat that it just doesn't hit me as hard emotionally anymore. Like, I respect the hell out of the Ambition, and there's still songs on there still really resonate pretty strongly, like Devil in a New Dress and Dark Fantasy. Specifically, those two for some reason stood out to me on this listen. But I don't know. It almost feels like inconsistent to me. I don't know. I'd have to think about it some more. It's almost like the flow of it is a little bizarre. I mean, I still respect the hell out of the Ambition, and even like what he was able to achieve sonically is impressive, but it just doesn't feel that special for me anymore. Anyway, what about you? Like, what makes it number 3 for you?
First of all, I do see what you're saying about it flow-wise. It is very, like, he has a song like Runaway, which is, piano singing, and then right after that, then there's like a rock rap thing. I do get what you're saying in that sense. But for me, as I said in the unreleased podcast, I just love that grandeur to it, the grand orchestral vibe that's going on, and then the way he combines that with a mixture of this deep dive into him and his persona and everything, and then also how that relates and intertwines with the modern society at the time. It's just such a rich album for me on all levels, musically, thematically, and obviously then has some of his best rapping of his career for me with songs like Gorgeous, and then there's also the really cool creative ones as well, and like anything we've heard from him before or since, like Runaway. And also in Blame Game as well, the second verse of Blame Game, where it's literally like him rapping, but each line comes from a different ear, and just so many interesting ideas going on there, and it all comes together, like I said, to create this cool picture of both him as a man and the society at the time, which is why I like the Marshall Mathers LP. It just really makes the album age in an interesting way for me thematically, and then obviously, like I said, musically as well. It's just really all comes together for me.
Eminem keeps getting referenced.
Well, luckily he's not in my top 5 in this instance, so there's that. But, yeah.
Or should we ask John?
That's it. Yeah. What was John?
Well, let me talk about Eminem first. No. Obviously it was hard not to put it in my top 5. It's definitely probably Kanye's objectively best album. It took so many risks. It was right on the heels of like his Taylor Swift thing, and he was like almost blacklisted from being cool. But he
turned 808 as well, which wasn't well received till years later.
Yeah, and he just turned all of it on his head and proved everybody wrong. And we got that amazing verse from Nicki. We got that amazing verse from Rick Ross, which you can't say very often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, when I'm in a Kanye mood, this album it just satisfies every Kanye craving I have. And whenever I dive into it, it's really hard to get out of and listen to something else. It's just so well done. And it's one of those albums where I feel like, I usually find new things every time I listen to it. Like usually within the instrumentation.
Yeah, I totally agree. With Lost, was it Lost in the World? I remember that's one of those songs again. We kind of running theme in this podcast where at first that sounded like a mess to me. Then the more I listened to it, the more I picked up more things, and the more it just all came together. But that's a ton of replay value for me, interestingly, because it doesn't for Caden, I guess. But yeah, it's really interesting how it works.
Yeah, it's a really epic sounding song.
Yeah.
Like at the end,
is very epic.
at the end of the song where it's like he's almost like going huh, huh, just over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it adds to it, and he pulls it off, which is really cool.
Yeah, like I said, a lot of really unique ideas there. Like I said as well, the Blame Game second verse, which is like, I remember the first time I heard that, I thought it was like a transition skit thing. It never even occurred to me it was actually a verse. Whereas like, you know, jumping from ear to ear and everything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on there. It's really, really good album.
I
Yeah.
definitely agree. Yeah, a lot of interesting things going on throughout the album.
Then you have Chris Rock's like 2 minute thing.
Yeah.
Usually skip that. Like it's a really, I think it's a really funny thing, but then when you've heard it 100 times, it's no.
It's old.
Yeah. I mean, as skits tend to.
Yeah, that's one thing. Kind of off topic, I guess, but a lot of old albums that can be a pain in the ass to listen to, like on their normal CD, because you have to constantly skip through skits every 2 minutes. The case here, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to give anything away. There might be a skit or two on Exhale you might have to skip, but
as long as it's not too frequent.
If the album's great enough, then you're not going to be that pressed to skip the skit. I think usually the issue with a skit would be if it goes on too long. Like, maybe this is a subjective thing, but if it goes on too long, then it's for its own good, if that makes sense. Yeah, and I would argue Blame Game does that skit at the end. I think it's closer to 3 minutes. I could be wrong, but it does feel like it goes on too long for its own good. But if it's just like, I don't know, a minute or shorter of a skit and it's kind of helps push along the album flow, then it's fine. I would argue Chris Rock's skit doesn't really help the album flow.
That's on point.
Probably enhances the reason to want to skip. Skits.
That's very on point. Because thinking about it, I do listen to like the first like 30 seconds, whatever, and then I realize that there's still 2 minutes left, so that's when I skip it. Then.
Yeah, there's that satisfaction you get though when you do complete it.
I guess, yeah.
All right. I guess we're down to number two.
So let me see what I have for my number 2. I have Radiohead's "A Moon-Shaped Pool."
Ooh,
nice.
Yeah, have you guys listened to Radiohead at all?
No.
I mean, I think I've heard ones here and there, but I couldn't like tell you anything like off the top of my head. You know, you're disappointed right now. Disappointed with us.
Yeah, no. Beautiful album.
I've heard that they're very like artistic and creative, right? All their albums are different and whatnot.
Yeah, all of their albums are actually very different, and they definitely push boundaries, which I know we would mostly say about any artist that we're fond of, but they actually have been incredibly influential. They've been together about 30 years now. But
how old are they? Are they in their 50s?
Now they're in their maybe mid 50s.
Wow.
Yeah. The best album to start with them, though, just like any kind of listener, would be In Rainbows. Very accessible, but also just shows how masterful they are at their craft. But A Moon-Shaped Pool is just, I think, if you were to listen to it, I mean, you could even start with that one. But it's just a lush, beautiful listening experience. Like, the production is insane, and the songwriting is like top notch.
Wow.
What's it like musically? Like, what kind of genre is it?
I would say, well, they're alternative rock. I would say it's alternative rock, but it also, I'm trying to think, how would I put this? Definitely alternative rock, but it's a very soft album. Like, it's not a loud album. It's very kind of subtle and quiet. And even if you look at the album cover, it kind of reflects, and the album title, it reflects actually like the overall flavor of it is very watery. So it's like almost like a lot of watery ballads. With a few more up-tempo things, but it's a very kind of almost, I don't know if I don't want to say put in the background, but it's like kind of a chill listening experience, but there's also a lot of anxiety to it. It's hard to describe, but it sounds like very like watery, the production, like it's underwater.
Wow, I'm looking at the cover right now. That does look really cool.
Yeah, they call it art rock. I guess that's probably solid way to describe it. But I just think like the risks they took in production, especially for at the time, like in 2016, I don't think people were really experimenting with this sort of instrumentation. But I just think across all their most of their albums, the instrumentation is genuinely unique and well thought out and just kind of boundary pushing. And yeah, the music is super captivating. I think because there's also so much attention to detail and there's such a tight working together. Five of them.
Yeah, nice.
They're amazing live too. I would definitely say they're hands down the best band I've seen live.
Wow.
Oh yeah, I find those kind of bands do work really well live. Sometimes even better live than in the recording.
Yeah, they might. Yeah, they probably would be an example of a band that for me transcends the recordings.
Yeah, I guess I love those kind of albums that just take you like they really craft out this interesting world, be it through the music and all the lyrics, and then you can get lost to it, get lost in it if you really just zone out to it, which is actually part of why I love my number one pick.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's suspense, but yeah. So I totally understand what you're saying.
I added that album to my playlist, so I'm gonna check that one out.
A Moon-Shaped Pool?
Yeah.
Oh, let me know what you think. I'm really curious.
I will. The way you described it made me want to check it out. The way that it's more mellow and good songwriting and good production. I'm curious.
Totally.
Good Caden, you were police there.
Yeah, I know, right? It's all ambulance. Number 2 for John.
Number 2 for John is MC Lars Attacks. And I know whoever decides to listen to this probably has no idea who or what that is. But okay. Lars Attacks MC Lars is a rapper. He's a nerdcore rapper. Essentially, he raps about like literacy, like books, like plays. But this particular album, he takes a step away from that, and it's a very introspective album. He talks about his religion. He talks about his drug experimentation, and coincides it with his love for writing and all things literary. He just gets very deep on this album, and a funny thing is his core fan base kind of rejected this album when it came out, so he hasn't made anything like this since, but it was something he really wanted to do. And I heard it and I immediately latched onto it because it was so different from what he usually makes. And it's really sad that he'll probably never make an album like this again, which is probably what puts it so high for me, because it is from him.
It's actually the same with my number 1 as well. It's interesting.
Nice.
Well, yeah. I remember. Didn't you send me one of the songs from that album? I believe it was from that album.
I did.
Yeah, you sent it in the chat.
I really liked that. Wasn't it like quite rock infused? I believe. I vaguely remember.
Yeah, it's a song called "Art of Darkness" with a rapper.
That's it. Yeah, that blew me away. I really like that. Because I really like rap rock songs, and like the way he pulled that off, combined with like the introspective lyrics and whatnot. It really did make me interested in checking out more. It's definitely someone who's been on my to listen to list since that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to, because it's no fun when someone floods the chat with something, but I could send you more and more songs from that album alone, and I guarantee you'll have similar reactions to different songs. It's just such a good, well put together album with really good writing, and like I said, introspective, which is something that the nerdcore audience doesn't really click with, which is why he doesn't really do that kind of music anymore, which is so sad.
Yeah,
it's very disappointing, but at least he made it.
My impression.
Yeah.
When I first heard that, I was like, oh, I would love to hear loads more of this. And obviously, there's the album, but then, yeah, it's a shame he didn't continue with that. I think I found it a really interesting and unique sound.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I went to this concert he put on when this album was released, and he opened up his set with the song called Lars Attacks, and it's all about like aliens landing in Roswell, New Mexico, and
Yes, I love stuff like that.
yeah, and he just makes it super fun. And he's like, I came to chew gum and I came to kick raps, but I'm all out of gum, so now Lars Attacks. It's just so fun.
That sounds like a fun album.
It totally
I like when
is.
they don't take it too seriously. Like I don't like when artists don't take themselves too seriously like that. In like lyrics wise, that's just great.
Yeah, I mean, just like Radiohead, you pointed out how the production was really well. MC Lars records with a live band, so
that's cool.
his instrumentation is really well as well as I don't know. I've never heard the Radiohead album, but I assume it's like not equal quality because MC Lars is an indie artist, so it's going to be lesser just because. But it is really well put together.
Right.
I remember as well, Love Story, I think, did the same thing with live instrumentation.
Yeah.
And even if you're not like, even if you don't know that it was done like that, like it really just makes everything hit harder, even on a subconscious level. So even if you don't realize it, like you realize it on a subconscious level, everything just feels so much richer and deeper.
Yeah.
Live instrumentation.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. One more thing I want to say about Lars Attacks. I saw MC Lars this year in February before coronavirus hit. And I need.
Oh yeah, you sent the photo.
Yeah, I needed a new Lars Attacks album because I've had mine since 2011 when it came out, and it's a white album. And the one I had was all like old and like almost yellow. How it gets old, So I went up to him, and I was like, "Hey," he remembered me. And we started talking, and I was like, by the way, I need a new Lars Attacks album. And he looked at me and said, really? Because it just like it hit me because like no one asks for that album, and he gave it to me. He didn't make me buy it. He just gave it to me. He's like, dude, I love that you asked for that. Here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, MC Lars, if you're listening to this podcast by chance, make another album like that. Just stay true to who you are, and I think that's what makes artists special. All right, what's your number 2, sir?
Well, we can just skip over this one because it's Love Story.
Nice.
So we've already gone into that. But yeah,
Damn.
Love Story.
I was wondering what your favorite. Have we discussed this? But I thought maybe like you put Trial by Fire.
I honestly, I think Trial by Fire is better as an album because, like I said, it has that thing where it's basically the story of an entire town. So like he tells stories of different citizens and paints a picture of the town. Which is all, and I feel it's just much better as an album, Trial by Fire, in that sense, much more cohesive thematically and musically too, I guess. But for me, Love Story. I mean, I've already talked about why I love it, but yeah, Love Story for me is this best album.
I'm curious what your number 1 is.
I have an idea.
Should we move to the final round?
Yeah. All right, we're at number 1.
Number 1.
Number 1, High Violet by The National, and they're another alt rock band. I got into them last year, but this one is, I don't know, it's hard to describe because I see them as very subtle, and I think their music is very nuanced. I think some people find it monotonous, especially if you're used to like music with a ton of crescendos, which this album does. A few songs with some nice crescendos, particularly the opening track. But just as a whole, I think a lot of people get that impression when they listen to some of the National. But this album, I think it's just so tight. The songwriting is, there's not really any filler there for me, at least. And it just really speaks to me. They did take time to grow on me, admittedly. But
what kind of music is it again? Like, is it alt rock? Like,
yeah, I said alt rock. I think Yeah, I would say alt rock, but they're also considered, and this album specifically too, they're kind of considered like post punk.
Oh, okay, we're getting into really, yeah.
Yeah, or they call it post punk revival.
That's
Kind of like
funny.
inspired by this.
I feel so old right now.
Now, MC Lars actually calls himself post-punk laptop rap.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, so I've heard that before.
I'm just gonna play this segment to my family, and they'd just be dumbfounded.
If you did what?
I'm just gonna play this section of the podcast to my mother and grandmother, and they're just gonna be dumbfounded.
How come?
Yeah, why?
Because post-punk revival, like I feel like that's something that will perplex them.
Well, hi, Josh's mom and grandma.
Yeah.
Aloha.
My grandmother's just discovering what hip hop is, so
she's just learning that fast part of Rap God right now.
Yeah.
Have you guys listened to the National at all? Or?
I've actually never heard of them.
Same, yeah. I haven't heard of them even.
Yeah, I honestly, well, it sounds stupid, but I mean, until I had started listening to them, I actually hadn't heard them either. I literally had not. And then I think I was looking up top albums list, and I saw them like ranked high, fairly decent amount. I think one thing that makes them kind of unique, and for better or worse, is that a lot of times you will see them, let's say, hit some top charts here and there, but they're not going to be like stereotypical, like this is the best album of the decade, or this is one of the top bands of the decade. Because I think, like I said about the crescendo thing, they're not a showy band. And I'm trying to think of how better to articulate that. But
say like minimalist, maybe?
Yeah, I guess you could say minimalist. Yeah, and like a lot of people use the disparaging remark monotonous. But and I think, yeah, even the first time I heard it, it's hard to describe, but a friend of mine actually had the same experience with them. Like the first time we heard them, like we had enough desire to want to listen to them more. So there was something about the music that stuck with us, but it was very like subtle and minimalist, which is funny.
You say like
they're
would you say like structurally is very samey, like like first verse hook, second verse hook, say like that maybe?
Well, I would say yeah, but there's something, but I would say there's something underneath it, woven into the music, into like the fabric of really most of their albums and most of their songs, that it stays with you. At least for me, it's like, even though it's like you can look at it and classically and say, well, it's maybe not the showiest album or like the most groundbreaking thing, but it's like the music just stays with you. And I think part of it is the main lead singer's voice and his lyrics. He really does make it. His name is Matt Berninger, and he's a wild presence in person, but on stage, I should say. But I think really a lot of their charm or lasting appeal for me is specifically his voice, because he has a baritone voice, and it's kind of unique to hear that sometimes in rock. But also like his lyrics linger with you. Like he has such a profound way of saying very simple phrases that hit you really hard.
Oh, like a really effective poet.
Yeah, I think that is part of what it is, honestly, is like their lyrics really do feel like poetry, more so than...
He's the Rugrat of punk pop revival, whatever else.
Yeah, maybe the National's like Rugrat meets post-punk.
They got inspired.
Yeah.
I mean,
that sounds really cool. It sounds very different in a very intriguing way. Very curious to check them out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long have they been a band?
They've been a band since, at least I want to say about 20 years. They released their debut, I believe, 19 years ago. Let me actually fact check that. I think it was 19 years ago.
It's interesting to me too, because I found albums that are very structured in that sense tend to age really badly for me. Like I really like Starboy by The Weeknd at first, but it's aged quite poorly for me because everything is just so structured and the same. So it's interesting to me that that actually had staying power for you, despite that structure. So,
yeah,
samey structure.
Yeah, it's slight, almost mildly perplexing to me too, because there's no other band or artist that, of like any time period that I really respect and really love the heck out of, that I can say fit that bill. Because generally, if an artist does feel like very samey or kind of minimalist and not too like, I don't know why I keep saying crescendos, but I feel like that's kind of distinctive about their music, the lack of crescendos. And that's why, like we said, samey. Like if you like are listening to a lot of artists like that, I would think it wouldn't be that interesting. But for some reason, they're one that does get me, and emotionally, I really enjoy it.
Yeah, I guess that's where the attention to detail and depth in on that deeper level. I think that's what I guess that's where it really comes into play there.
Yeah,
really a testament to how that can really add a lot of value to stuff that maybe on a surface level don't appear to be anything crazy.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it really creeps up on you. Yeah, with more listens.
Cool.
I love music like that. It definitely shows depth, and it shows. They didn't just show up one day and make a song and call it a day. Like they spent time on it.
Yeah, totally. What is
Yeah.
your number one, John?
My number one album of the 2010 decade is Childish Gambino's "Because the Internet."
Had a feeling it'd be Gambino.
Yeah.
Gambino.
Yeah.
Have you guys heard the album?
I have not, unfortunately.
I meant to back in high school, but I ended up just listening to the songs from it. But I liked
that
what
was
I heard.
fairly big when it came out. Like I feel a lot about
I
it.
remember hearing a ton about it too.
Yeah. So when I first got into Childish Gambino, it was when his first album, Camp, came out. And he changed so much as an artist from Camp to Because the Internet. And I really loved what he did on Camp. And so when I heard Because the Internet, it didn't take me in as quickly, and I actually went back to it maybe a couple years after it came out, and then it clicked with me. So on his first album, he was all about his wordplay and his silliness, and just kind of hooked you with that. But Because the Internet, he really hooks you with his storytelling and his attitude and his persona almost. And a cool thing about this album is, so at the end of Camp, there's this whole monologue about him being on a bus coming home from camp, and he's talking as if he's from the perspective of a character called the Boy, and he tells this secret to this girl in the bus, and then he falls asleep, and then she tells everybody, and then at the end everyone's making fun of him, and he has more of a cynical outlook on life. And that story carries over to Because the Internet, and it has way more of a cynical outlook on life. And he continues the story of the Boy through this album. And the cool thing is he actually wrote a screenplay to go along with the album, which actually
yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, it you read it and it coincides with the songs, and it really makes it very cinematic and very well put together. And it's such a phenomenal record that I cannot ever recommend highly enough.
Yeah. That's why I love The Weeknd so much, is because of that strong storytelling and cinematic element. That sounds like exactly my kind of thing.
Yeah, I guarantee you enjoy it very, very much.
Yeah,
I remember I started writing rap lyrics to the beat for 3005 back in high school. I remember that wasn't the first song I rapped to, I think, but that was one of them. Like I remember hearing that as a single. Fuck yeah. The lyrics are so fun on that too.
Mm-hmm. Now that's a very infectious beat. That's a great beat.
Yeah, it was like too infectious.
How is it musically? Like, is there like that mix of rap and singing, or was this more of a rap one?
This was his transition from rap to singing. So it had some good rapping on it, but mostly it was him going into singing, and he would just croon throughout the album, and it was beautifully done. which is why
cool.
it didn't click with me at first, because I did love his rap so much in his other album that I wanted more of that. So like songs like 3005 and Sweatpants, if you've heard that one, those two songs have the most rapping on them, aside from Life, the Biggest Troll at the very end. But most of the album is him singing, and like I said, just having this like cynical attitude. He's kind of playing the part of his character from the screenplay that carries over from his first album. It's so much to get into. Musically it's very well done too. It's very, very big. It's almost like My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, but not as Kanye, you know?
Literally, I guess.
Yeah,
Wasn't he acting at this time too, like in Community? He had started already, right?
No, yeah, he'd been acting during his other album too, during his mixtapes before his album. He's been doing so much for so long.
That's crazy.
So yeah, that's my number one for sure.
I love versatility and stuff like that. Yeah.
About Childish, is he has he lately, like in the last year or two, been focused more on music or acting?
I mean, he put out an album this year.
Right.
I would say music is probably secondary to him, or even third, because he's working on his show Atlanta, and he does have kids now. So he's always talked about how he's wanted to write a book. You never know. Somebody as multi-talented as him, you really never know what you're going to get next.
Yeah, right.
So it could be a movie, it could be a Community reunion, even it could be a new stand-up comedy special, it could be a TV show. You name it. He was in that Star Wars movie Solo as Lando.
Yeah, he was great in that.
Yeah, he's great. I recommend
it. I really respect
guys.
creatives like that.
Mm-hmm.
Me too.
Like a modern day Renaissance man for sure.
That's part of why I like Seth MacFarlane, for example. Like he does, he's doing like a sci-fi show, voice acting for 2 animated comedies, and he releases like old school classical albums as well. Like he does loads of different things. Obviously, writing, directing, and everything as well. So yeah, I love creatives like that.
Nice. Yeah, I know a guy personally who does music. He does dabbles in YouTube. He
Oh
yeah. I can get you his contact.
Yeah, I guess my number one, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My number one, as correctly predicted by Jonathan, is Kissland by The Weeknd.
Dang. Okay.
Yeah. This is fitting timing because it's actually just I think right now, or it was number one on the iTunes charts. Like it suddenly saw this huge surge in popularity right now for some reason. But prior to that, it was always like it was always his least popular project because, again, it's one of those albums which is way different to anything else he's done. I mean, it's in a similar vein, but it's very different and it's very inaccessible. So like as we were saying, the first time I listened to it, I just I didn't hate it. It was just there for me. Like I didn't have an opinion on it either way. Like I was just completely indifferent to it. But then the more you listen to it, the more everything just clicks. And then suddenly, and now just every time I listen to it, I'm just enchanted. It's as on top of it being having very grand feeling, just like My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. I love albums like that. Also, so saying related to very similar to your Gambino album, it has this really deep story to it, where across the entire album, where he's not only expanding the Weeknd character with character development and everything, but he's also fleshing out this entire world. Because basically the story is he travels to Kissland, and that's where he has this thing with this stripper, like this relationship with a stripper. And then there's also it was designed at a time in his life where he had just become big from Trilogy, so he was basically dealing with feelings of feeling isolation and being in this unfamiliar territory because he was touring for the first time and everything. and then he goes back home then at the end of the album and finds out his girl was cheating on him, and obviously he was cheating on her, and it's all this insane story going on with character development and everything like that. And you combine that with all this, the grand musicality of it and these crazy melodies, and it's an incredible experience, is how I describe it.
Wow.
Yeah,
What makes it?
You make it sound pretty great.
Yeah, what makes it inaccessible?
I honestly couldn't put my finger on what it is. I guess it's just like myself and everyone else I know who have listened to it, and including like just reading opinions online. I couldn't tell you what it is. It's just the first time you listen to it, like you recognize there's stuff going on, but it's just you're completely indifferent to it. You're like, oh, okay, it was all right, I guess, but I preferred the other stuff. And as you return to it more, it's just on one listen, it just kind of clicks for you. I really couldn't tell you what it is. I guess because maybe like structurally is all over the place. Like this, I don't think there's a single song on the album which is like verse, chorus, verse, chorus. Like he's just constantly doing all these switch ups. And also musically at the time it was like, it's kind of like orchestral and synthy, but it's also I'd have to re-listen to it to fully describe it. Like there's so much weirdness going on, I guess. Not weird in like a Kanye level, but like it's just very it's just very different, I guess. But it's aged incredibly well, and actually listen to it now, it does sound like a modern album. It's hard to describe. It's just very, very unique.
Wow. Would you put it well ahead of Trilogy and House of Balloons, or no?
That's the thing. Like, if we were not doing this one per artist, Trilogy would probably be like, no, 3 or 4 maybe. So it wouldn't be well above. It would be like, yeah. I mean, they're near close to me, like 1 or 2 spots gap. Most people tend to prefer Trilogy, but for me, Kissland was a lot more richer for me.
Do you like House of Balloons, or?
Oh yeah, definitely. That'd be my number 2 after, because House of Balloons is part of Trilogy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What are the 3 parts of Trilogy?
House of Balloons, Thursday, and Echoes of Silence.
Oh, nice. I like the name Thursday. That's a cool name.
Yeah, I love all his album names. They're really cool.
House of Balloons is cool too, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Kissland is kind of a lame name, honestly, but
yeah. I mean, it accurately describes where he went in the story, which I guess is the point.
Yeah, but Kissland, like, come on, man.
He could have made a better name for the place, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's basically Japan.
Like Josh's house.
He's describing as Japan, and like all the music videos are in Japan. It's like a glorified version of Japan, essentially. Not only glorified, like he portrays it as like glorified and picturesque on the surface level, but then it actually has a really shady and seedy underworld. It's a really cool portrayal. Like it really feels sci-fi in a way. Like if you watch the music video of "Belong to the World," it's like this really cool sci-fi. Like it's all inspired by films like Blade Runner and like a lot of like 80s sci-fi.
Very cool. I totally get that vibe from it. Maybe because I have watched a few Weeknd music videos. I totally get that.
Yeah, it's inspired by like Blade Runner and like a lot of like just sci-fi from that era and just movies in general from that era. It's a ton of depth and it's such a cool concept, and he absolutely nails it.
Wow. Wasn't Starboy kind of in that same sort of vein when he was in that mindset?
In what sense?
As far as like embracing that sort of like colorful sci-fi aesthetic?
I wouldn't really describe Starboy as sci-fi. It's for me. I think that was very much probably as I don't know. I wouldn't really. Yeah, I wouldn't describe that as sci-fi. I get what you mean with all like the neon lights and stuff, but Kissland was a much grander vision. I feel, where Starboy was very much just in a way probably his most stereotypical concept in a way, because that was basically just the stereotypical rich thing. I don't think it was as inspired as Kissland or Trilogy or whatever, but
it was basically just made for radio, right?
Not a praise as his other album.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I do like Starboy as well, but like Trilogy, Kissland, After Hours, like those have so much more going on, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to talk about After Hours when the podcast is over.
Yeah, Have you heard that, Caden?
No, I haven't.
You probably had Blinding Lights, right? That's been like everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He definitely has, even if he doesn't know the title of it. It's everywhere.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've probably heard it.
But yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's. Do we have any more final statements?
Honorable mentions. How about some honorable mentions?
Okay.
Oh. Beach House's Teen Dream, probably Tame Impala's Lonerism. Third one that I wrote down was Frank Ocean's Blonde.
I would say 1989 by Taylor Swift. Another one would be Sound and Color by Alabama Shakes. Gone Now by the Bleachers. The last one would say I would put Joanne by Lady Gaga.
Yeah, I guess for mine, as I alluded to, Kendrick Lamar, Good Kid, Mad City. I really like Kids See Ghosts. I would probably say Marshall Mathers LP2, Dr. Dre, Compton. But those are just a few that come to mind immediately.
All right, well, thank you all for listening to our top 5 albums of the 2010s lists. Join us next time. We'll probably do an episode about our top 5 films of all time. And on nobody's list will there be Back to the Future. All right, bye.
That's good. It's not good at all.